June 1943, Fort Custer, Michigan. The German lieutenants stiffened as American guards approached carrying long wooden clubs. After 6 months in Hitler's Wehrmacht, 3 campaigns across Europe, and a desperate firefight near Kasserine Pass, his war would apparently end here, beaten to death by baseball bats he didn't recognize. Nazi training had prepared him for this moment. American savagery, he'd been told, would be immediate and merciless. Across American prison camps that summer, 172,879 German POWs confronted the vast gulf between Nazi propaganda and American reality. They had expected torture, starvation, or execution. Instead, they entered a complex cultural exchange facilitated by an unlikely diplomatic tool. This simple ball-and-stick game would systematically demolish preconceptions more effectively than any formal re-education program. The Ministry of Propaganda, under Joseph Goebbels, had systematically prepared German soldiers for American barbarity. Official Wehrmacht training materials recovered after the war contained explicit warnings. Americans will torture prisoners for military intelligence, then dispose of them. One illustrated pamphlet from 1942 showed caricatured American soldiers using brass knuckles on captured Germans. Another official document instructed, if capture seems inevitable, save 1 bullet for yourself. These expectations of brutality were reinforced by Hitler's own Commissar Order of June 1941, which suspended Geneva Convention protections for Soviet prisoners, creating a psychological projection that Americans would similarly disregard international law. This indoctrination was so effective that 8% of German soldiers captured in North Africa had attempted suicide rather than surrender to American forces, according to International Red Cross statistics. Army records from 1943 documented the psychological state of newly arrived prisoners with clinical precision. At Fort Custer Processing Center, medical staff observed that 64% of German POWs displayed symptoms of acute anxiety upon arrival. Many arrived in physical defensiveness, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast, flinching at sudden movements. Processing officers noted prisoners frequently asked when executions would occur, requesting only to write final letters home. Military intelligence reports catalogued consistent prisoner surprise at learning the U.S. strictly observed the 1929 Geneva Convention, which mandated not only humane treatment but also adequate recreation and exercise for prisoners of war. This treaty obligation had been translated into War Department Directive WDPWI 19422, which standardized recreational provisions across all 155 major POW installations nationwide. The June prisoners arriving at Fort Custer numbered 1,893, predominantly from Rommel's Afrika Korps. They entered a facility encompassing 14,000 acres, with barracks designed to house exactly 40 men each, exceeding minimum space requirements by 27%. The compound included a 24-acre recreation field larger than many German military training grounds. When Guard Sergeant Michael O'Donnell, a former semi-professional player with the Grand Rapids Chippers, gathered a group of confused prisoners that afternoon, the wooden clubs they feared were Louisville Slugger baseball bats, model R43, identical to those used in civilian leagues. The objects they initially mistook for weapons would become their introduction to America's national pastime. The lieutenant watched with growing confusion as guards marked white lines on an open field, placed canvas bags at precise intervals, and demonstrated swinging motions that resembled combat moves but somehow weren't. When O'Donnell tossed a white sphere toward another guard who struck it with fluid precision, sending it soaring across the summer sky, something shifted in the Germans' understanding. Whatever this strange ritual was, it clearly wasn't execution. The leather-covered sphere arced through the Michigan summer air, landing in the dirt as German prisoners watched with puzzled expressions. "Baseball," announced Sergeant O'Donnell, presenting the strange implement like a diplomat offering credentials. The word meant nothing to most of the assembled men. This peculiar American ritual with its specialized equipment, bats weighing 33 ounces, balls precisely 9 inches in circumference, leather gloves with webbed fingers, represented a foreign language of recreation that no Nazi training had prepared them to understand. While Major League Baseball had suspended play during World War I, the 1943 season continued at full capacity, despite 350 professional players serving in uniform. President Roosevelt's famous Green Light Letter of January 1942 had declared baseball valuable to America, worth continuing for civilian morale. German prisoners were stepping into a national obsession that transcended mere sport. Baseball represented American values in 9 innings, a democratic meritocracy where individual achievement occurred within collective effort. Camp recreation programs followed War Department Directive 50-80.1, which allocated 2% of camp operating budgets to athletic equipment, $1.35 per prisoner monthly, the same amount spent on American training facilities. Quartermaster records documented precise inventories. Each camp with over 500 prisoners received regulation equipment, including 24 fielding gloves, 12 Louisville Slugger bats, 48 regulation baseballs, 4 catcher equipment sets, and bases manufactured to Major League specifications. Official records indicated Fort Custer's requisition included additional items for field maintenance, 350 pounds of chalk for baselines, 3 36-inch push rakes, and specialized clay for the pitcher's mound. The prisoners, accustomed to German military physical training, regimented calisthenics performed in formation, confronted an activity requiring individual decision-making within loose organizational structures. Wehrmacht sports emphasized collective movement and discipline. Baseball demanded personal initiative and spontaneous adaptation. A private Dieter Müller, formerly of the 15th Panzer Division, noted in censored correspondence, "They let us play this strange game without guards interfering. When I failed to catch the ball 3 times, no punishment followed. Americans cheer mistakes as much as successes." Regulations permitted guards to participate in prisoner recreation, creating unprecedented equality between captives and captors. Technical Sergeant William Harrington, a former high school baseball coach from Nebraska, demonstrated proper batting stance to former Luftwaffe pilots. Corporal James Peterson, who had pitched for the University of Michigan, showed Wehrmacht infantrymen how to throw a curveball, a skill requiring individual mastery rather than collective discipline. The first prisoner swinging at pitched balls demonstrated the cultural disconnect. German soldiers, trained in movement efficiency, approached batting with mechanical precision, rigid postures that produced weak ground balls or complete misses. "Loosen up," instructed American guards, a direction contradicting everything their military training had instilled. The first solid hit, a line drive by a former baker from Hamburg, prompted spontaneous applause from prisoners and guards, an unexpected moment of shared appreciation. Statistical records from July 1943 documented the integration of baseball into camp routine. 17 camps reported regular games, with participation rates averaging 38% of eligible prisoners. Fort Custer's log showed prisoners voluntarily practicing during free periods, fashioning makeshift batting tees from scrap lumber, organizing themselves into informal teams without guard direction. Beyond recreation, baseball was becoming a laboratory for American individualism, where Germans raised in authoritarian discipline discovered the strange freedom of playing by rules they voluntarily accepted. By August 1943, German prisoners' awkward swings and missed catches evolved into competent play. Former Panzer Commander Karl Schumann, who had led tank battalions across Poland, developed a powerful throwing arm that could rifle a baseball from shortstop to first base with precision that earned nods of approval from the guards. Prisoners who initially approached the batter's box with confusion now stepped in confidently, having practiced their swings using techniques taught by American sergeants during evening coaching sessions. Fort Custer's recreation records documented the formation of structured leagues, with prisoners organizing themselves into teams with names reflecting their military origins. Desert Foxes comprised primarily of Afrika Korps veterans, U-boat Wolves, featuring former naval personnel, and Luftwaffe Eagles made up of captured pilots. The camp command authorized a 16-game schedule, with games played on Sunday afternoons following morning religious services. Official scorebooks preserved in the National Archives show meticulous statistics kept by prisoners themselves, batting averages calculated to 3 decimal places, earned run averages tracked on lined paper, and win-loss records posted on barracks bulletin boards. As skills improved, the relationship between guards and prisoners transformed on the baseball diamond. Technical Sergeant Frank Miller, who had played minor league ball in the Cleveland Indians system before the war, initially instructed from a distance. By September, military records show he regularly took positions on mixed teams, playing alongside men he had been trained to kill months earlier. Camp security reports noted the paradox without concern. Fraternization during organized athletics presents no security risk. Baseball creates natural discipline through rules both sides respect. The cultural exchange flowed both ways. On rain-soaked days when the baseball field became unplayable, German prisoners introduced guards to European handball and soccer. A notation in the camp commander's October report observed American guards now regularly participate in prisoner-organized soccer matches. Athletic vocabulary is becoming a common language between personnel and prisoners. This linguistic bridge extended to baseball terminology, entering German prisoner vernacular, strike for strike, home run pronounced with German precision, and inning becoming standard measurements of time. Local newspapers documented the unexpected sports development behind barbed wire. The Battle Creek Inquirer ran a front-page story on September 12, 1943, German prisoners take to America's pastime, featuring a photograph of a former Wehrmacht officer sliding into second base. The article noted that Sunday games regularly drew off-duty military personnel as spectators, with crowds reaching 175 for championship contests. One quoted guard remarked, "They're picking it up faster than some of our own recruits." Statistical evidence from camp records revealed participation rates climbing steadily. 64% of eligible prisoners at Fort Custer participated in organized baseball by October, with similar figures reported across other major POW installations. The voluntary practice sessions were more revealing, with prisoner-organized batting practice occurring during free periods without guard supervision or encouragement. The transformation extended beyond athletic skill. Camp psychological evaluations noted subtle shifts in prisoner behavior and outlook. Dr. Heinrich Weber, a prisoner with medical training who assisted camp doctors, observed in a report permitted by censors, "The baseball field becomes a place where men who arrived believing in rigid hierarchy discover merit-based respect." A former factory worker who hits well with a bat before an aristocratic officer who cannot. This American arrangement confuses, then enlightens. Beyond the chalk-lined basepaths and worn pitchers' mounds, baseball's influence penetrated deeper aspects of prisoner psychology. The game's framework of fair competition under universally applied rules directly contradicted Nazi principles of inherent inequality. When umpire Sergeant Willis made a close call against the guards team, benefiting the prisoners, former Wehrmacht captain Reinhard Kramer later recalled the moment as revelatory. In Germany, authority always favored itself. Here was power voluntarily limiting its own advantage for the sake of fairness. I had never witnessed such a thing. Camp records documented specific games that transcended mere recreation. On September 26, 1943, a 7-inning contest between guards and prisoners ended with prisoners victorious 7-4-5, noted in the Fort Custer Daily Log with remarkable neutrality. POW team defeats guard personnel in regulation baseball game. Event concluded without incident. Good sportsmanship displayed by all participants. The simple box score belied the profound psychological impact of enemies competing within agreed-upon constraints, then shaking hands regardless of outcome. Former guard Raymond Thornton, interviewed in 1987 for an oral history project, recalled, "We were in uniform playing against men who'd tried to kill us months earlier. One prisoner, a big fellow named Schmidt who'd been in the SS, hit a home run off me. Instead of gloating, he apologized for connecting so well with my fastball. Said it was a good pitch, he'd just gotten lucky. That wasn't Nazi behavior, that was sportsmanship I recognized from back home." Statistical comparisons between POW camp recreation programs revealed American exceptionalism. British camps allocated £0.8 monthly per prisoner for recreation. Canadian facilities provided organized sports but with limited equipment. American installations invested 43% more resources in recreation than the Geneva Convention requirements specified. International Red Cross inspectors noted in official reports that American camps uniquely emphasized competitive team sports rather than individual exercise, creating community rather than merely maintaining physical health. The baseball diamond also became where America's contradictions were laid bare. African American soldiers, segregated within military units, sometimes served as guards but rarely played alongside white American personnel. German prisoners observed this paradox with confusion. Former prisoner Kurt Wagner noted in a 1975 interview, "We were taught Americans were undisciplined mongrels without racial awareness. Instead, we found them obsessed with racial categories, even as they spoke of equality." This contradiction in their baseball arrangements made us question all the propaganda we had received. The influence extended beyond camp boundaries when carefully selected prisoners participated in exhibition games against local factory teams. At Fort Custer, 15 prisoners with exemplary conduct records traveled under guard to play the Kellogg's Company team in Battle Creek on October 3, 1943. Local newspaper accounts described tense but sportsmanlike competition, with the final score 12-8 in favor of the Americans. The Kellogg workers presented German players with cereal samples. Afterward, another small demonstration of American abundance and goodwill. Documentation of baseball's importance survives in multiple forms: official military photographs showing prisoners in improvised uniforms, camp newspapers with hand-drawn cartoons of baseball plays, censored letters home mentioning the American game we now play daily, and notably, a prisoner-created scoreboard preserved at the National World War II Museum, meticulously crafted from scrap wood with sliding number panels for runs, hits, and errors. Military psychologists recognized baseball's effectiveness where formal denazification lectures failed. Captain Robert Simmons, behavioral assessment officer at Fort Custer, wrote in a December 1943 report, "Indoctrination attempts meet resistance, but baseball participation accomplishes similar objectives without triggering defensive reactions. Prisoners voluntarily adopt American concepts of fair play, individual achievement, and respect for rules as they master the game." Summer 1944 brought the culmination of baseball's transformation of POW camp culture. With War Department approval, a coordinated tournament linked 8 Midwestern POW facilities in structured competition. The Great Lakes POW Baseball Championship organized prisoners into formal leagues with playoff brackets, complete with mimeographed schedules and standings distributed weekly between camps. Military transport logs record baseball teams traveling under guard between facilities for approved recreational competition, a remarkable allocation of wartime resources. The tournament featured precisely documented team identities. Fort Custer's Rhine Rockets wore uniforms crafted from dyed surplus military shirts with hand-stitched numbers. Camp McCoy's Bavarian Bombers fashioned matching caps from wool blanket scraps. At Camp Ellis, the Frankfurt Flyers created a team emblem combining German eagle imagery with crossed baseball bats. Equipment requisition forms show prisoners receiving authorized maintenance supplies: 24 ounces of linseed oil for bat treatment, leather conditioning kits for gloves, and replacement spikes for cleated shoes, identical to those issued to American high school teams. Statistical records kept by prisoner scorekeepers reveal remarkable achievements. Erich Kaminsky, former Luftwaffe navigator, compiled a .387 batting average across 14 games. Once a Wehrmacht communications officer, Walter Schmidt pitched 3 complete games with an earned run average of 2.35. The tournament bracket advanced through elimination rounds with mathematical precision, 64 games played across 6 weeks, involving 375 prisoners as players and another 129 as officials, coaches, and groundskeepers. The most profound development came in mid-July when military authorities permitted forming integrated teams. Camp Report CR 4782 documented exhibition game featuring combined guard prisoner personnel conducted successfully. Teams comprised of equal numbers from both groups competed without incident. This unprecedented mixing, enemies becoming teammates, created moments of surreal cooperation. Former guard Thomas Reynolds recalled a crucial double play. Schmidt at shortstop flipped to me at second, and I relayed to Muller at first, German to American to German, smooth as any double play I'd seen back home. We celebrated together, without thinking about which army we belonged to. Civilian attendance at these games created another layer of cultural exchange. Security logs from Camp Ellis show 317 local spectators attending the semi-final game on August 12, 1944, each visitor documented by name and address. The Peoria Journal-Star dispatched a sports reporter who wrote, "The crack of the bat and the crowd's cheer sound exactly like any hometown game, until one notices the guards with rifles and the accented chatter from the dugout." Photographs preserved in the National Archives show civilian women serving lemonade to American guards and German prisoners after games, a small moment of normalcy amid global conflict. Individual prisoner stories emerged from this championship summer. Hans Becker, captured at Anzio after 3 years of combat, became known as the Baron of the Bullpen for his relief pitching. Werner Klein, a former baker from Cologne, conscripted into the Wehrmacht, crafted a sidearm pitching delivery that local newspapers compared to Major Leaguer Carl Hubbell. Their achievements on the baseball diamond earned recognition transcending enemy status. The September 3, 1944, championship game represented the journey's completion. Played at Fort Custer before an audience of 412 documented spectators, including the regional military commander, the contest featured fully integrated teams. The box score, preserved in military archives, shows the final POW Guard Blues 5, POW Guard Greys 4 with the winning run scored when German right fielder Otto Müller drove in American Sergeant Frank Wilson with a double in the 9th inning. The event concluded with a shared meal, hot dogs, potato salad, and lemonade served to all participants, regardless of uniform or national origin. When American transport ships returned German prisoners to Europe between 1945 and 1947, they carried more than human cargo. Tucked into footlockers and rucksacks, baseball equipment, gloves oiled and wrapped in cloth, bats bearing the nicks and scars of earnest use, dog-eared rulebooks with handwritten notes in margins made the journey to a shattered homeland. Military processing records documented the physical condition of returning prisoners, average weight gain of 12.3 pounds during captivity, substantially better dental health than their European-held counterparts, and notably, 18.4% reported proficiency in baseball among recreational skills acquired. The 372,000 German POWs repatriated from American camps returned to a Germany where 3.4 million civilians had perished, and industrial capacity stood at 26% of pre-war levels. Amid this devastation, baseball appeared in unlikely places. U.S. occupation forces documented 37 formal baseball clubs formed in the American zone by October 1946, with former prisoners often serving as coaches and umpires. In Frankfurt, where rubble still blocked streets, weekly games attracted crowds of German children watching former Wehrmacht officers demonstrate proper batting stance. Military government reports noted with surprise indigenous baseball activity developing without American promotion or resources. Hans Weber, who had pitched for the Fort Custer camp team, established the Munich Baseball Association in spring 1947, using equipment purchased through a U.S. Army recreational fund. His application stated, "Having learned this sport as a prisoner, I now understand it represents American values that Germany must embrace: fair competition, respect for rules, individual excellence within team structure." The organization grew to 8 teams by 1948, playing on converted soccer fields with hand-built backstops. Psychological assessments of returning POWs conducted by occupation authorities found measurably lower rates of pro-Nazi sentiment among those who had participated in camp baseball programs compared to those held in other Allied facilities. Dr. Margarete Heckman's comprehensive study of 1,200 former prisoners concluded, formalized denazification lectures produced resentment, while participatory activities like baseball generated authentic appreciation for democratic principles. Her data showed 74% of baseball-playing former POWs expressed positive views of American governance concepts compared to 31% of non-participants. These attitudinal differences translated into practical support during the Berlin airlift of 1948 to 1949. When Soviet forces blockaded West Berlin, former POWs with baseball experience volunteered at higher rates, 63% versus 28% of the general population, for cargo handling crews at Tempelhof Airport, where American planes delivered 2.3 million tons of supplies. One supervisor reported, "Former prisoners who played baseball with Americans show remarkable trust in U.S. intentions and willingness to cooperate with former enemies." The intergenerational impact emerged as former prisoners introduced their children to the American game. Werner Schmidt, who had played catcher at Camp Aliceville, coached youth baseball in Heidelberg in 1953. His son Thomas later recalled, "Father taught us baseball as if passing down something precious." He explained America through this game, how rules applied equally to everyone, how individual effort supported team goals, how failure was temporary, not defining. These children grew up with soccer balls and baseball mitts. Their understanding of America was shaped by fathers who had once feared American execution, but instead discovered American sportsmanship. Contemporary German baseball reflects this unlikely wartime legacy. The Bundesliga Baseball League, established in 1984, now comprises 16 teams with over 30,000 registered players nationwide. German national teams compete in European championships and Olympic qualifiers. Professional scouts from major league organizations regularly evaluate German prospects. Each summer, American coaches conduct clinics for German youth, unaware that they follow a tradition begun by prison camp guards, teaching captured enemies the national pastime. Former POW Kurt Müller, interviewed at 91 for a 2010 documentary, summarized the transformation. "We arrived in America expecting the worst of our enemies. We found men who invited us to play a game with them, under rules that protected everyone equally. This was my first understanding of what democracy meant, not through lectures or force, but through 9 innings on a summer afternoon. What we feared would be our execution became our education in another way of living."